All right, this is the last slide of the previous video in which we discussed the flexible budget performance report. This report shows all the budgeted amounts and the actual amounts along with the variances. And so, just the differences between the actual that we received or spent and what we thought we were going to receive and spend on the budget. And so we have two columns of variances that can be on that report: the sales volume variance and the flexible budget variance. It's the flexible budget variance that we are going to go forward and investigate. And this is the difference between the flexible budget and the actual results for a given actual number of units that we sold. Let's take a look at an example. Now, this company is called Cheerful Colors, and let's just say that they make crayons. Okay, so colorful crayons. That's why they call their company Cheerful Colors. Flexible budget performance report for them shows the static budget, which is our master budget that we came up with, and it shows it for 50,000 units, 50,000 batches of crayons. The flexible budget for 52,000 units, and the actual results, which was for the 52,000 units that we actually sold. So if I compared the actual results for the 52,000 units that we actually sold to the 50,000 units that was in the static budget, I'm comparing apples to oranges. But I'm going to compare the actual results for 52,000 units to the budget for 52,000 units, the flexible budget. And so that's going to be the variance. We want that flexible budget variance. That's what we're going to really work with. Okay, and it's going to show the flexible budget variance for everything, for direct material, direct labor, overhead, broken down into variable and fixed overhead. So all of these things are going to be broken down so we can then further break them down and investigate why these variances occur. All right, so let's start with direct materials variances. The flexible budget variance for direct materials has to be broken down. We have on that flexible budget report, we just have one variance. The total that we paid for the direct material and what we thought we would pay for direct materials for the 52,000 batches of crayons. Okay, so now we're going to take that total variance and break it down and say, well, did we have this variance because the cost for each unit of the direct material changed, or did we use more or less of the direct materials than we thought we would use? Okay, and so we have two different variances that we're going to end up with. One that looks at that cost per unit of the direct material, and one that looks at the quantity of the direct material that we used. And so here's our first one here at the bottom of this slide, the direct materials cost variance. So we have to determine the actual cost for one unit of that direct material. So if we were with the dog houses, and we said in the previous slideshow that shingles would be 50 cents a piece in our standard. But what if we actually paid 58 cents a piece? Well, the 58 cents cost per unit of shingles, per shingle, is what goes right here in this formula. The actual cost for 1 unit of the direct material. Then we're going to subtract the standard cost for 1 unit of that direct material. So in case of the shingles, we would take the actual cost of 58 cents per shingle minus the standard cost of 50 cents per shingle. So that difference would be 8 cents per shingle, okay, for that quantity. Then we're going to multiply that quantity, that difference, times the actual quantity of shingles that we actually used, total, for the year, okay? And we can make this shorter. We can put actual cost as AC, standard cost as SC, and actual quantity is AQ. And for all cost variances, whether it's the direct materials cost variance, the direct labor cost variance, the variable overhead cost variance, and even if those sometimes have a different name, those still the ones that deal with the cost, they all use this same formula. AC minus SC, that quantity times the actual quantity of that direct material or direct labor hours or whatever it is, okay? So it's a relatively simple formula, but you're going to keep using it over and over, so it's good to maybe memorize it. Okay, so here's an example. This is with cheerful colors, okay? So their standard costs include $1.65 per pound for paraffin wax. It's that wax that makes up a crayon, okay? So they have to pay $1.65 for that wax. And then they also have to pay 10 cents a pound for shipping and handling. So the total cost for the paraffin wax is $1.75 per pound. So now we're going to look at the actual cost that we paid this year, totals up to $1.60 per pound, including the handling charges. So we save between the $1.75 a pound and the $1.60 a pound, we save 15 cents a pound, okay? Now, so how did we get that $1.60? Well, we would have looked at the total actual cost we had for wax was $104,000. That would have been on our flexible budget report, okay? You don't have that here, but you would have, that's where you would have got this number. The flexible budget report would have shown our actual costs for direct materials. That would have been $104,000, and we would have divided that by how many pounds we used of the wax. And again, that number is not right in front of us. You would have to, it's not something we calculate, you would have to get that number. Generally, there's going to be something out in the factory that's going to be able to count how many pounds we used, okay? And so we'll take the cost for all those pounds, 104,000, divided by how many pounds we used this year, and that's where we got the $1.60 per pound. So the actual quantity, again, was 65,000 pounds. That would have come from, maybe from accounting department, from inside the materials area. Okay, if they keep track of how many pounds of wax are issued out to the factory floor, then we could have got it from there. Otherwise, we would get it from the factory. All right. So we take our formula, remember, was AC minus SC, and then that is multiplied by the actual quantity. So here's our AC, our actual cost per pound of wax was the $1.60. I'm going to subtract out the standard cost, what we thought we would pay for per pound of wax. So that $1.60 minus $1.75 is negative 15 cents. Then we're going to multiply that by how many pounds of wax did we actually use this year. 65,000 times negative 15 cents, and that equals $9,750. And because the actual cost was less than what we thought it would be, that's going to be a favorable. Okay, that means that my operating income will be $9,750 more than it would have been if we would have paid $1.75 a pound instead of $1.60. But always you can look at the actual. If the actual is less than the standard, then you're going to have favorable. Remember, this is not necessarily good. So you're thinking to yourself, what do you mean? We got the wax for 15 cents less a pound. You know, the operating income is almost $10,000 better off. So what do you mean it might be bad? Okay, well, it might be bad because what if the reason we paid $1.60 a pound was because it was crummy stuff? It was wax that we had to throw bunches of it away. It was hard to work with. Our direct labor workers had to put in extra time to work with this stuff. There was more scrap of it. Whatever. It caused some of the crayons to not hold their colors, and we had to scrap those whole boxes. Or if they slipped through quality control and ended up getting sold, and then our customers are complaining because it's not holding the right colors, it's melting on the kids' fingers, whatever. Okay? So that isn't necessarily a good thing. It needs to be investigated. Okay? If we got the same quality of stuff and got it for cheaper, well, generally that would be considered a good thing. All right, this slide talks about the direct materials efficiency variance. Now, the efficiency variance is another word for the quantity variance. How much wax did we use compared to how much wax did we expect to use in the budget? Okay, so we have a formula for the efficiency variance. Okay, and here's our formula. The actual quantity that we used of the direct material, the wax in this case, minus the standard quantity, what we should have used of wax, and then that quantity times the standard cost per pound of wax. Okay, so again, we can shorten this into letters, acronyms. The actual quantity is AQ minus the standard quantity, SQ, and then that amount times the SC, the standard cost per unit. Okay, so here's back to our example. The standard that Cheerful Colors set for wax is 1 pound per batch. We did 52,000 batches, so 52,000 pounds of paraffin were expected to be used, 1 pound per batch. Okay, so we should have used 52,000 pounds, but we actually used 65,000 pounds. 13,000 pounds more of wax than what we should have used. So we take our actual quantity, 65,000, subtract out the quantity that we should have used, 52,000, and then that amount times the standard cost, which is $1.75 per pound of standard of wax. When I get that all done, I get $22,750. Now, the 65,000 is more than the standard quantity, and so this becomes unfavorable.